Welcome back to Mindful Conversations, the talk show where we explore mental health with depth, heart, and honesty. I'm Lisa Ford, a clinical therapist, approved supervisor, and entrepreneur here in the Laurel community.
Welcome back. I'm Erica Coleman, founder and clinical director of Embrace and Tranquility Behavioral Health, also located here in Laurel. Over the past few episodes, we've tackled some powerful topics together. I am so glad you decided to join us today. Each month, we create a connection, an open dialogue, and learning about health and overall well-being. This month, we're going to give it to you real talk. We are going to talk about the holidays, mental health, and what is hard about the holidays. This year, I feel like it's extremely more towards finances, managing coping skills, and just what's important to you. Encourage you to create realistic expectations and hope for emotional flexibility. Today, we're going to discuss a lot of different topics, starting off with redefining traditions, creating holidays that fit just for you. Lisa, what do you say about when we start to talk about redefining traditions? What does that mean to you?
Well, a big part of it is to just allow us to begin to think about what's realistic. And I think we talked about that initially in the introduction. Many times we have the expectations of our families, right? Expectations of prior experiences with other holidays. But this year, we noticed that things are going to be different and very difficult with finances, with things that are going on in the economy, politically. Families are struggling. And I know I've noticed that in my, population. I'm pretty sure you've noticed it in yours. So I think what we want to talk about in this section is how do we create and actually excuse people and say, hey, it's okay. This year we want to just be realistic. What can you do? What are you able to do? So let's permit and allow people to just be able to be okay with what they can do this year. Limit the stress and think about what is something that's possible. Like when I think about my own family, many times we do family gatherings, we travel, but I have families, members that may be struggling. So do we put the pressure on them to say, hey, you bring this and be less collective and be individualist, or should we go back to just extended families and being more a part of how we can assist each other? What do you think?
I agree with that. I think a lot of us, especially in our area, we have a lot of furloughed workers. We have a lot of people who are used to being able to do things that are, like you said, over the top, like your family, going on trips and coming together and doing things like that. But let's get back to what the holidays are even about. Holidays are supposed to be about family, supposed to be about time, supposed to be about games, watching football, so even just finding out, what does that look like for me? Do I have my family come over? Maybe we each bring a dish. Maybe we each bring some type of a game to associate with that dish, so that we can encourage and foster healthy connection, healthy interaction, because we do know when family comes around, it gets a little sticky sometimes. So, there are unresolved conversations, there are unresolved conflict, trauma that sometimes bleed into the holidays, which leads people into isolating. So at this season, we want to make sure that we're not isolating, and we give you a little bit of tips and tools to ensure that we can still be collective and still keep your peace. So I think that would be what I think about when I'm redefining traditions. Even like we said, playing different games or everyone bring a dish that they want to try. Who knows? We could figure it out together.
I think it's just allowing it to be okay.
Right.
And an option that says, okay, I know what we've done last year, or what we've been doing for our traditions, but maybe this year may look differently. And it's okay.
Right.
No pressure, no stress. Long as we're together as family, if you have family,
right?
Because some people don't have family,
right?
So how do we create those opportunities for them to connect with other people? Maybe it's community, maybe it's their church, maybe it's their friends, other connections. But I think, in this segment, and it's important for us to just allow the people that we actually talk to and even ourselves to just be okay with. You may not have the traditional holidays this year. And it's okay.
That leads me into, I heard you say about, losing people and having those moments of, now this may be the first year of having to tackle a holiday without a loved one, or a holiday without a spouse, or, something of that nature, finding ways to still celebrate, honor while enjoying your holidays and not making it a sad tradition, but starting to make it into something that you can add into the pot, whether it is making that favorite dish that they used to love, and whether it is even having a picture up and saying, hey, we're going to add them into the blessing today, or everybody give that gratitude of what you experienced with that particular person, or even just doing that in the family circle, period, because this is a thankful season. And we are thankful that we do have the opportunity to be able to create these new traditions.
You're right. Erica's, I think, as far as being gratitude and having being thankful that, hey, whoever is available and who we have access to this year, recognizing that we're so happy that we still have these individuals here to be a part of our celebration. But then, like you said, how do we honor the people who have gone before us, like our ancestors, our family members? A picture, like you said, is very good. As a particular dish that maybe that person liked may be good as a way to honor that individual, making and allowing a space for people to isolate.
Right.
Because sometimes grief, you need to isolate.
Right.
All the stimulation causes a lot of anxiety and stress.
Right.
And, sometimes individuals who are directly connected to that loss may need to feel like they can isolate.
And have
and
a
it's
moment.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. Go to a separate room, isolate, pray, whatever you need to do, so you can regroup and come back and join the rest of the family if you can. So it's okay. I think, just creating those spaces and allowing that for our population and people that we serve is a healthy way of coping with the holidays.
I just thought about something.
Okay.
So I know, and it didn't stick, but we're going to try to get back to it. I know here in Laurel, they have the turkey trot, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
The turkey trot is a fun new tradition that we can do that is, typically a low cost or for free. Getting to watch people, even if you don't join, people dress up in their turkey costumes, or even doing a servitude day, and going and helping to feed the homeless somewhere, or, finding different things in the area that can be beneficial. And like we even said, with honoring, what was something that your family member that was here loved to do when it came to the holidays? So whether we get back into going into a church setting, or if we go into the church and ask the church, hey, what are you guys doing for the holidays? Because I would love to be able to give. This is the opportunity, the best season of the year, where we get to give to others and think outside of ourselves. And that helps us to redefine those traditions too. I know I went and did like coat drives with people, but again, it didn't stick. I've only did like a year. I can't say it's a tradition yet, but it might be like every other year I go do something different, but just trying to find some way to give back, right?
And I think you've told me before that, and I think we're looking at it as an opportunity, how you sponsor families.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Your agency, because you work with a lot more families than I necessarily do, that you actually bring in families and say, hey, we're going to sponsor you this year.
Right.
Right. And that's definitely a good attribute to the community. Right.
Yes.
So
it definitely takes a load off, because as we come into this season, a lot of the different traditional routes of being able to get toys or things, because that's a big stress. Nobody wants their kid to have to go back to school and not have something that they got for the holidays. And so a lot of times we utilize other resources like Angel Tree or Toys for Tots or something like that, that is helpful with taking that stress off of people, because we cannot do this alone. Sometimes we may need help from other organizations. Sometimes we may need help from family, and it's okay. It's okay. That's what we're all put here together. So making sure that we get back to that. And I think this year, if no other year, because of our political climate and where we are in a standstill, that this will be the year that we all get back together.
Yeah, and I think that part of our role here today is not only to talk about it, but to also provide resources.
Absolutely.
So at the end of this segment, you will have a list of resources that are be available to the community around trying to tap into whether you want to be a donor, whether you need the actual resources, whether you want to be a part of a community that helps others. We're going to provide those resources at the end of this segment.
Yes, I appreciate you.
Yep, absolutely.
So the topic of the day, right? So navigating through family dynamics and expectations. As we touched on a little bit earlier, we identified that there could be unresolved conflict, unresolved trauma, or just people's personality differences that can make the holidays a kind of, do I want to deal with it or not deal with it type of mood. So what are some of the suggestions that you have that can help people to set realistic expectations of themselves, of their families, and yeah.
Well, I think many times, people may be apprehensive about going home, right? Because, like you said, there may be tensions, there may be historical issues within family. Whenever we're together, there's fighting, and we know that happens in communities, right? So, we want to be realistic about what does happen. So I think part of is understanding what is it like when you go home to your family. Not your friends, not your neighbors. What do you expect when you go home to your family? How do you then begin to work with your family? Actually, in preparation, a lot of people I work with, because they're anxious and they have anxiety, they need to know what's going to happen. Like, what can I prepare for? They may not necessarily be able to control it, but they need to have some techniques on how they can prepare. So, if you need that preparation, maybe part of it is contacting your family. Hey, what's the plans? How can I contribute? Right? Getting your schedule. If you're traveling, like, how do you prepare for yourself? What are your traveling plans? Try to make sure there's no stress related to that. TSA. I just saw something this morning. Airports are lines are tremendous because of TSA. They're on shutdown, right? People are worried about traveling because there's no TSA, right? So that's a big stressor. So some people might not even travel because there's no TSA. So, but thinking about those variables that are occurring right now is important. Also, how do you begin to plan events with your family? Times to engage and times to retreat, like I talked about earlier. There may be times where we want to get together, people get together, and if they're planning meals, everybody's participating, so that may be an opportunity. But then also, you may need to think about, how can I, as an individual within this family system, retreat? Because it may be too much stimulation. And with an individual's anxiety or stressors, it may be hard. Some of the other things may be, how do you incorporate self-care? And I know we're going to talk more about that later, but it may be somebody getting up every morning, like you talked about earlier, going for a walk, exercising, doing some things to help alleviate some of the stressors and help preparing people for things that they know are going to happen. Because you cannot control everything. And I tell my clients, there's like a bubble, right? And inside the bubble, which is my hands, from my hands to my head, those are things that you can control. Outside the bubble, there's so much space of things that you cannot control. So you have to be able to work on things that you have limited control over versus things that you have no control over.
I agree, Lisa. I think the best thing for me is, how am I showing up? So when I think about how I'm showing up, that's me checking my body for my nonverbals, me checking my thought, my mind. So before even going into a situation, starting a breathing exercise, or even doing a body scan, or my shoulders feeling high up. Am I feeling tense in my chest? So trying to reduce those different things. Because like you said, in your bubble, you can only control what's in your bubble, and that's you. So with that being said, I encourage you to take a moment before you go into any situation, not even just dealing with the holidays, but as we're interacting with others, especially in this season, that we do a check of who we are and how we're showing up, because we're our only best representatives. Do a body scan, do a walk, do a breathing exercise. And those are moments of when you are feeling overstimulated, you could still utilize and come back to that same base point. Like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I can go to the bathroom and be in there for a minute and create this space for myself to say, okay, let me bring down my heart rate. Uncle Bob just said something that was a little out of pocket. I might have to come into the bathroom and have a moment to myself, check my body scan, and come back out with a smile, because again, this is not about me, it's about us as a collective and how we're able to work in this space together. And be cheerful. I want to be cheerful. I want to be a cheerful giver. It's like, no, I'm just joking. But I want to be a cheerful person. And if I have to put on a song that makes us laugh and we all start dancing, like that is always a great time. It's putting on music that we dance and we enjoy each other in festivity.
I agree. I think that it's actually very important. I'm glad you mentioned that, how you show up. Because I don't know about you, as a clinician, in my family, when there's challenges, they look to me, they're like, what do you think? So there's a lot of pressure on us. And so, it's important for us to kind of show up in a space where we're relaxed. We're not anxious. We're not hostile or feeding into the family conflict, because a lot of times they're looking for us to kind of smooth things over. That's a lot of weight on a clinician. But I think that, I know for me, I always tell my family, okay, I'm not here for everybody all the time. I need a break too. I need you guys to come help me sometimes. And so being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm not always the person that's going to answer all the questions, but also knowing that the role that I have in my family is important, and that I respect it and honor it. And I'm here when I can and when I'm available. So I think, it's very important for us to consider that anxiety, managing it is paramount, and it's also pervasive amongst many families. Someone in every family has some kind of anxiety. Even us as clinicians have anxiety about certain things and worry about things.
Right.
So it's something that's very common, and we have to find ways to normalize it, and just say, okay, you're anxious, let's calm down. Like you said, just take some deep breathing, just step away, take a deep breath, go for a walk, and let's figure out a way to come back, because avoidance is only going to make it worse.
Identifying
you have to way to tolerate. You have to find a way to identify it and tolerate anxiety.
That's half the battle. When you identify it, it's half the battle. But that brings me to the next point of exiting tense or different conversations gracefully. So do you encourage people coming up with safe words? I encourage, family members to come up, or individuals to come up with like a safe word. And my favorite thing is boundaries. Like, some things I don't want to talk about, and especially not in this setting. So if there's a way, if we could let's table that. Let's table that conversation. Like, let's just enjoy the moment. Or even like you said, just being able to say, and take an exit stage left, take your moment, because you do have some of those old school aunts and uncles that will not take heed to your steps. Like, excuse me, ma'am. Like, they want that attention. So you may have to exit stage left for a little bit. What are some things that you find yourself doing during the holidays when you need to exit stage left?
Well, unfortunately, it's not necessarily the most healthy thing, right? I may exit stage left and maybe look at emails,
right?
Do some things with social media, look at things that are funny, like watch videos that make me laugh.
Okay.
Things that don't necessarily are mind stimulating, things that are just funny,
right?
That kind of help rejuvenate me and say, okay, life is not that serious.
Right.
Honestly, I've been a pretty serious person all my life, and people say things are just not that serious. So I've worked on trying to find ways to just laugh, enjoy life, playing games. A couple of times we've played some games like, anybody familiar with right, left, center?
Yeah.
Excellent game, right?
Yeah. I'm taking all the money.
We do play for money. Take the money, but it's like a way to just like have fun and like put all your burdens aside. So finding things like that, like taboo games like that, are really an opportunity to just put down any of the stressors and just focus on family and just having fun. Good food will do it too. Good food, right? So this person's macaroni and cheese, or that person's sweet potatoes. Especially for Thanksgiving and those holidays, bring a semblance of love and happiness. And so, I found that, if I get certain types of food and we're enjoying it as a family, right?
I start
And
dancing.
I encourage my clients and things that people that I work with to do the same if they have the capacity to do it. If you don't have family, how do you connect with other social connections? Whether it's the senior center, there's been numerous activities that the city of Laurel has for seniors, adults 18 and over. There's activities such as that. There's activities that are occurring in the community that you can participate in. So it's trying to find a way to not isolate, even though oftentimes when in distress, that's the first thing you want to do. You don't want to be engaged with other people. You want to isolate. So, one of the things I would say is important to stretch yourself, right? And try to do what's not comfortable, which is to connect. Even if it's a phone call to a long lost friend, even if it's a phone call to someone you know from your church or someone from your community, trying to connect with others is important around these stressful times and holidays.
Yeah, I think even leading up to it, right? So that leads us into our final talking point would be utilizing like self-care and different things that lead up to not just the day, because it's not about the day, but just getting through these holidays. And we discussed earlier is that this is the time period that we often have a increase in different hospitalizations, increase in visits, an increase in sessions due to all of the things that we listed today, whether it is dealing with the family, dealing with grief, or things of that nature. So how do we prioritize and add self-care as we prepare for these holidays? The dates aren't going to change. So learning how to do micro self-care on a daily basis to prepare us so that we are in our optimal, space and peace of mind. So when we get into these situations, we're not coming in, like we said earlier, checking how we're coming in, and we're not coming in at a 10 and we can be at a 3. So that it leaves us room for margin to deal with whatever stressors that may come with the day or the anxiety leading up into that. So as I put out, I try with my monthly newsletter publication is having self-care practices within that so that you're doing these micro things so that they become a habit. Whether I wake it up in the morning an extra few moments to have some tea. And with tea, that comes with an entire breathing exercise with it as well. And having that moment to just take in some of the herbs and spices that are also good for you, along with just giving a moment to decompress before I start my day. If there is a micro self-care could be like stretching in the morning. The micro self-care could look like going for a walk. It can look like taking a little bit extra time in the shower. And so we think that a spa day has to take a long time. There are the little tablets that you could throw in your shower as it's going through, and the eucalyptus and everything else that's supposed to lemongrass and all those different, scents that can help to relax you before you start your day. So what are some tips and tools that you would encourage people to utilize for like micro self-care, just something to do on a daily basis for you?
Well, I was actually going to mention those little tablets you can put in your shower and they just aroma, but I think some other things you could do is when you think about just minor self-care, taking baths, candles. Anybody like candles? Candles, scented candles are a way of just relaxing, right? Just listening and smelling those candles while you listen to soft sounding music. Another thing is if you like audiobooks, right? Sometimes people don't necessarily like to read, but they like to listen, right? So audiobooks create an opportunity to just listen to calming books and get a chance to read things that you are interested in. Another way is just stretching, like you said, walking. Some other things you can do would be consisted of just the things that you eat. Some things cause more stress versus others, like limiting your sugar, right? Limiting alcohol, right? Unfortunately, the holidays, most people want to drink, right? Limiting alcohol will create a more settling an opportunity for you to be more relaxed. Just being able to, those vices that sometimes that we use to when we're stressed, how do you try to deal with those? Because substance use is a big thing around the holidays. Mm-hmm. Suicide, as we know, the month of November, when this actually airs, is International Suicide Month. Mm-hmm. And we know that many times during the holidays, a lot of people are contemplating or thinking about, I don't have the finances, I can't support my family, I don't have the job, I just lost my job. Mm-hmm. I don't have these resources that to us seem like it's not serious, but to them it is. Mm-hmm. And suicide is about the mind telling you you're just not good enough. Mm-hmm. You just need to end it, right? So how do we begin to look at trying to cope and create those self-care processes and engaging with others? I'm always going to say that. Mm-hmm. Holistically, I look at the health, physical, mental wellness as far as self-care, mentally, physically, socially, spiritually. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you look at all those domains as a way to try to help you throughout your self-care? So it might be devotions. That's spiritual, right? Mental. It may be listening to some soft-sounding music that calms you. That's emotional. Physical. It may be going for a walk. Mm-hmm. It may be running a mile, going to the turkey trot, mm-hmm. right? Connecting with others while you're there. That's social. Mm-hmm. So looking at those various domains, there's a lot of different ways that you can socially look. You can look at your self-health and self-care.
I agree so much. I think that it is very, very, very important to find ways to manage your self-care, especially in this season. And like you said, this will be airing during that suicide, month, and let's normalize having conversations about mm-hmm. that, because we can save a life mm-hmm. by normalizing having conversations. That's what we're here for, to have those mindful conversations. Mm-hmm. But just to be able to normalize that I'm not okay, and to normalize these intrusive thoughts that, okay, that will help people to say, hey, maybe you might want to reach out to a professional and, start working on that process as well, because everything is not meant for you to handle it yourself, because mm-hmm. the only voice that you're hearing is now yourself. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's not the most productive voice, right? So I think that putting ourselves in that position to normalize that is okay not to be okay, and to normalize the conversations about how can we realistically set expectations amongst ourselves and our family members when we do need that extra type of support, and letting people know, like, I need support today. Mm-hmm. Because even as a clinician, like you spoke about earlier, that there are times where everybody comes to me. Mm-hmm. Everybody expects me to have everything mm-hmm. together. I'm mm-hmm. supposed to be this, your mental health this, so your mental health should be 1,000%.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's like, no, sometimes I have to say, I am not okay. Mm-hmm. Today, I need you. Mm-hmm. And be okay with that.
Right.
And not feel that I have to live to their expectation of having it all together. Mm-hmm. So I think that not even that being a clinician are not the only people that struggle with that battle, but just people that are the matriarchs or, of mm-hmm. the family struggle with that battle, that people think they're supposed to have everything together. So just normalize having those conversations and understanding the difference between healthy solitude and isolation. Mm-hmm. There's a difference.
Right.
And so I appreciate, just having these types of conversations so that we can make awareness and make it normal for people to hopefully recreate this in their family mm-hmm. and even in their self.
I think we talked before about intergenerational trauma, mm-hmm. right? This goes back to that. Mm-hmm. In previous segments, we've talked about generational trauma. And a lot of it is around grief, right? And how we celebrate grief, how we, respond to grief, and how the holidays and how it impacts. There's overlap there. Right. And so many families have lost. I think every family has lost somebody, right. And so, like, how do you cope with that loss, during the holidays? And I think that's what we wanted to emphasize today, that it's normal, right? Most families are experiencing loss, and that isolation is not the answer, right? It's necessary. You really want to kind of collectively get together with family. That's family that's left over, right? And if you don't have family, what about friends? What about your community? Whether it's spiritual. So finding ways to connect with others is going to be very important during the holidays as we cope.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. Thank you all so much for being a part of this conversation. Remember, healing is a journey. Every small step matters. Be kind to your mind, listen to your body, and give yourself permission to grow. We invite you to leave comments and any questions that you may have. We would love for you to be a part of our conversations and community. Community is essential to any social and emotional well-being. Follow us at Mindful Convo 24 on Instagram, and you can email us any questions, comments, or concerns at mindfulconversations24@gmail.com. Have a wonderful day on purpose.